Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I am the host today of La Token VCTV. And today we're going to speak about startup advisory and why it is important. So I've got an incredible lineup of guests today: Andrew, AJ, Anil. And what I'd like to do first is have them each introduce themselves. Andrew?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for having me here, Gary. I'm Andrew Adcock. I'm the CEO of Crowd for Angels, a regulated crowdfunding platform here in London, and also one of the early adopters of crypto. We've been backing crypto projects since 2014, and we allowed investments in crypto, so actually paying in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dash, etc., since 2016. So we have our hands around a lot of young companies and we guide them through the journey of funding.
AJ?
Hey, thanks, Gary, for having me here. So I have been investing into startups for about 7 years now, early stage investments, technology-enabled startups. Raising a new fund, which will be called Silver Needle Ventures, which would be investing about 200K USD in technology-enabled deep technology startups with a focus on sustainability. So that's kind of the flavor, and have been advising startups for ever now. So happy to be on part of this panel.
Thank you very much, AJ. Anil?
Hey, thanks, Gary. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Anil. I'm from Unicorn India Ventures. We are early stage venture capital fund based out of India, Mumbai. We do tech-enabled investments, investing anywhere around $500,000 to $2 million to $8 million. Currently, we have a portfolio of around 30 plus companies. Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. And my name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've been involved in 17 startups. I'm the CEO, president, and co-founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart, yes, the heart of Silicon Valley. Love AI, quantum computing, metaverse projects. I've written 174 articles over the last 2.5 years and have been involved in about 1,000 podcasts. So great to be here. So I'd like to start off with, let's talk about it. How important are advisors for startups? So Anil, I'm going to start with you.
So in today's situation, Gary, most of the entrepreneurs are first generation entrepreneur, and many of them, are under age of 30. Hence, they come, with very limited business, wisdom, and more on, their product, service, or technology what they have built. But when it comes to building organization, you start very small. Most of the time, organization starts with two, three, co-founders, and then they start building their team. They will grow from 3 to 5 to 10 to 15. But in process, when you're building organization, there are several pillars which are very important for building a sustainable organization, which includes technology, which includes finance, which includes business development, marketing, technology, HR, administration, a lot of things. And if you are a tech founders, then you are more focused on technology, and you learn as you move on. And hence it becomes very important to handhold somebody who can guide you on areas where you don't have know about or knowledge. And hence it is very important to have advisor. What I believe that every advisor have a limited role. So as you grow, keep climbing, and keep adding more and more advisor, and that's the way you should go about.
Okay. AJ, now, I have this rule of threes, and I wanted to talk to you about the rule of threes. So one of the things that's going to come up for most of the startups that are tech startups are security and privacy. The second situation is you need the connections with the venture community globally. And the third is you need to have somebody that's high profile, that has just had an exit. Somebody's got visibility, like John Kin from 5.9, maybe Stuart Butter, somebody that's got visibility, Slack.
Mhm.
What do you think about that? What would you do? What would you say the ideal advisory board looks like?
Yeah. So I would think let's pick a set of five, right, as an advisory board. So two would come from a similar kind of a background, a similar segment. Obviously, there's diversity in the five. Two others might not come from a similar segment, but would add value as an independent advisors, right? Because they would bring something that what we might call out of the box thinking to that, right? And then there would be one which is much more keen to expand the business with you, right? To grow the business with you. So that's kind of my advisory board. But as Anil mentioned, most of the advisors are sounding boards to me, right? And whether the entrepreneur wants to learn everything, that's up to the entrepreneur. But still, they need the sounding boards to drive them to the right path, and that's critical.
Yeah, no, I mean the advisory board and the board of directors are really important. I mean, one of the things that I've done is Rick Orloff, the former chief security officer at Apple, is on our board. I put him on one of the top five. The second is Bill Reichert, Guy Kawasaki's partner, Garage Technology Ventures, Stanford MBA, Harvard undergraduate, internationally known, Pegasus. And then the third, I look for somebody that's just hot at the time, Nick Davidoff, who did Masquerade, or somebody it's hot today. Because it just seems to look, because what happens, you're online just like now. As soon as you get somebody online, what do? They Google your company. What do they look at? They look at the board of directors, the board of advisors, who you are, who your team are. That's it. I mean, it's like, the keep it simple, stupid thing, the KISS principle. So, Andrew, you're in the UK. I mean, how is it for you in terms of advisory boards? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly different to what you have in the US and certainly Asia. There's less requirement for an advisory board, but I think there's a different emphasis. Our advisory board, whilst it does have VCs and things of that nature on, it's more about contacting their sort of black book of contacts, opening the doors to those VCs or investors or groups that you want to get access to, and then also getting the knowledge that you require. I mean, the danger with going someone that's hot for the moment is that later on, if you've left them on the board too long, it can really bite you. And I've also found in the past that where people utilize names, and I won't give any examples, but where they have utilized names, that those names have, been a little bit tarnished later on and it's affected the business. So one thing I'd always say is, obviously, look at your advisory board, make sure that you keep it up to date. There's no harm in changing advisors, or at least just changing how they form onto your website, putting people higher, putting people lower. But in the UK, it's really about opening them doors, because you just can't send a cold email to a VC or an investor. They don't care. They get hundreds a day. But if you can, access a friend or a colleague, put him on your advisory board because he's a, JP Morgan or he's a VC, he might be able to open the door for you. And it's using those contacts to access the capital you need. And in my business, that's ultimately the goal, is access the capital you need to grow as a business.
Yeah, no, I'll give you a direct point, and I'm not going to mention names, but I never heard of the Queen's Trust. Yeah, I never heard of it until I met one of Richard Branson's friends, and I'm not going to say who it is, but who also introduced me to the one of the top car families in Germany. And I didn't understand that's how it works. And you get into this inner circle of folks. In fact, right now I'm in Palm Beach in Florida. And so here it's just incredible who you see. And you're right about it. It's not about sending your deck over but if each one of you refers somebody, if Neil calls somebody up and says, listen, AJ's got something hot, or somebody calls you, Andrew, and says, listen, I got something in crypto, it's going to dominate the world, you're going to take a look at it. So
Sure.
that's sales 101. I got to just tell you, so we're on the same page. That's how you do sales. So I know for 5 years, I had a chance to come out of startups, and I worked for Hewlett Packard, and I got 5 promotions, and I went through the same thing. It was sales, right? That's how you sell. You
Oh,
do
absolutely.
reference selling, you do consultative selling. You need somebody to get you in the door. So it's important. And if we look at the kind of advisors, it look like you're right about this dynamic in a continuum. Uh, it does change all the time, right? The person needed. But what you got to do is get in the door to get yourself launched. I know raising money, it's really important to have the right kind of advisors. And here's the other thing. At each stage of your company, you need different people, as well as sometimes a different team, by the way. So many CEOs don't survive having over 150 employees, because now it's more operations and how do I operate a company, not how do I create the entity. So
No,
where do
you
you
are very right, Gary. In fact, you mentioned a very important point that most of the time people will go to website and try to find out, who are the people behind it, what kind of advisors you have. One very important point, which I would like to highlight, while building organization, it's very difficult to attract talent, right? And if you have right advisor, who can, pull, some good, human resource for you, I think that also great help. And this can only happen if you have right advisors.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, hiring the people, the right kind of people. Well, here's the thing. It's not just hiring the right people. You're hiring them at the right price, right?
Yeah,
Or do they
I,
believe in your
I
company enough for equity? Or are they just there to get a high salary?
So I
And
know
so,
one listed company in India, which was struggling to get a CFO, CTO for quite some time. Listed company, profitable, very good PE, but they were struggling to get a CTO. And this advisor, had just to make one phone call, and the position was filled, right? So this actually helps.
yeah, no, I agree with 100%. But these are the secrets, right? The secret sauce of building a startup. That's why.
Well, I think if I was going to jump in there, I'd say if you're ever taking an
I,
advisor
I,
on, try and make sure that they're your friend. It sounds coy, but take them for a dinner, take them for a beer, learn a little bit about them, ask them, about their wife, their children, whoever. It's going to pay dividends later on, and don't try and use it all up at the start. I think timing is also a critical thing. Don't get them on board and then immediately sell. It's sort of get them on board, warm them up, and then whether it's a couple of months, a year, 2 years down the line, that's where they can pay dividends. And I had a recent example. I had an advisor who's been on our board for 5 years now. We used him at the start, wonderful. Then we let it cool down for a little bit. But just very recently, we were dealing with a cancer company, and you need somebody in biotech and that sort of field. Went to one of his events. I hadn't been in a while, reestablished that relationship, had a conversation with him, and it feels like old times, and he's able to make those introductions that we require. So people have to cherish a relationship as well, not just take. I think that's one thing I find from startups, and as an entrepreneur myself back in the day, you do need to ask. Of course, you need to ask to get where you want to go, but also look at the reciprocal transaction that you're giving back to the advisor, and have that balance.
Well, that the reciprocal part comes back to what kind of equity are they going to get in the company, right? I mean,
As
this is
little as possible.
right. And the thing is, but my thing is, you treat people fairly. I don't know about you guys, just in my opinion, because you never know what's going to come back in your life. You never know who you're going to see again. I mean, I've seen people that I've dealt with that have come back and been, the head of, $8 billion companies at the time, or no, I shouldn't say that, $8 billion in personal wealth from the time that I met him. And we treated each other right at that time. He and I became good friends. He's had 30 or 40 different investments in unbelievable startups. So what goes around comes around, and you got to realize that, because you're going to meet the same people going up as you do coming down. And I've heard that a number of different times. So treat people the way you want to be treated and be fair. So what is the amount of equity? Neil, when you're giving equity out, what is the number? What is the range of equity? Let's take for just this conversation, a percent, I like to translate into stock, but what kind of percent should I look at three levels, right? You got the strategic level, then you've got the medium level, then you just got an expert level. What kind of percent do you give them? How much?
So, Gary, wherever I'm involved, I always suggest, my founders to keep 2% aside for advisors,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I ask them to break it into 8 buckets, 25 points each, and start with that. And as you see the value add or involvement growing with time, then you can always keep on increasing. 2% is not the limit, but that's the room we set aside. And as organizations grow, and as value add keep on growing, then certainly the equity contribution could be increased. But coming to that's my way of doing things. But coming to your point, if I had to suggest something for short term, mid-term, and long term, then I would short term I would always keep 0.25 to zero point 0.5. Mid-term could be between 1 to 2%, and long term could be between 2 to 4%.
Got it. AJ, what are your thoughts?
So I kind of concur. One of the things I would do is goal-based equity, right, for some of it, and also tranche it or space it out based on how the advisor is going along, right? I definitely believe if someone is opening doors and actually closing things, they require a better percentage than someone who's just on the website for the namesake, right? So there is a difference between the two. I think the numbers indicated by Anil are pretty good, but I think it obviously depends on the stage of the startup, right? Early stage startups, if they find an advisor who can really change the game for them, shouldn't mind giving even 5%, right? If there is a game-changing advisor, right? I mean, if you're in crypto and
What's the game advisor look like, AJ?
correct. Yeah. So let's say you're in crypto, right? You're a crypto startup and you find someone like Gary, right? And they're opening all the right doors for you. Or you really think you have found a SaaS product which is doing good, but you really need to expand in the US for gaining the millions. So then you need someone who can bring that thing. Today, investors are doing that in some way, but I think advisors can do that much more actively. And I think that's where the game changing advisor can open doors not only from the money but from also the business perspective.
Yeah, money, the business perspective, you're right. And well, here's the question, Andrew. What happens if the advisor is not doing their jobs? How do you move them away, get rid of them?
Well, it's usually a stern phone call. I like the difficult question. I think basing it off on what AJ mentioned, when we look at advisors, we do it in a step process. So we never give it equity on day one because they tend to promise the earth, and if they haven't delivered, they've got something for nothing. So we do it in what we call ratcheted stages, so that as long as they deliver something, they'll get a small percentage, 0.1, 0.25, 0.5. And then if the relationship is panning out as expected, then the ratchets kick in and we provide the equity accordingly. But you do get into these situations where you have a conversation initially, there's a good relationship in the first few weeks, even maybe the first few months, but they're not opening the right doors, they're not providing the capital, it's just not working out. Now, the nicest way, of course, as I said, is you pick up the phone, you have a conversation with that advisor, you let them know your concerns early on, and if they're quite honest and open, then they'll accept that it's not working and maybe they'll leave. If they believe that they're still owed that equity, it has to come back down to that contract that you first had in place. And I'd always advise having at least a basic contract in place, because the last thing you want is over an email, we've agreed 10%, and then suddenly you're sort of hook, line, and sinker and you're going to run up law bills. But if you do have to kick them out, and we've had to kick them out before, you just have to have a look at the transaction. Sometimes as a company owner, you have to accept that you've provided that equity, you've provided that stake, and c'est la vie. There's not much you can do there. But I find actually that type of relationship, when it does happen, it's years down the line when the company is looking at an exit, or that advisor wants some assistance or wants to sell their share, that you start becoming a bit more difficult. Let's put it that way, is the easiest way of saying it. But I prefer to have my conversations over a phone call or a lunch or something like that, and really early on, sort of signposting if it's going wrong. That's important, but have a legal agreement, have a ratcheting mechanism so they don't have all the equity on day one. I usually say 3 to 5 stages. 3 is the most common, but 5 if it's a bit of a longer relationship. And start off small. Remember, advisors are also buying into this story of the startup. They think it's going to blow up, and you want to take them on that journey with you. So if you're only giving 0.1, but one day they'll get to 2%, that 2% could have been in Facebook, and suddenly they're a billionaire just from advising the company. That's something that I would say. But phone call, have that sort of I'm going to say man-to-man conversation. Maybe that's not a little way to say it, but have that conversation, signpost the errors or where you feel it's not working, and hopefully the relationship can just break apart naturally. It's like you said, Gary, if you believe when you're going up as you're coming down, you meet the same people, then 5-10 years later, you might need that person, or they might need you, and there can be some sort of transaction that comes out of it at the end.
Yeah, so one of the things. Go ahead, Anil.
So, I agree with, Andrew, that having some kind of contract is very important. But I am of the view there are 2 things. One is advisor, which we are discussing, and second is professionals, right? We may go wrong or right with professionals, but if it is advisors, then it is our choice. It is we who normally approach them and ask them to come on our board. So, very unlikely that, will not benefit. As we also indicated in beginning that advisors are more a sounding board, and their role is different, right? Their role is not to run your business, but basically to advise. And these are the people who come with very deep wisdom. So I am of the view that advisors, if you have right advisors, it's very unlikely that you would want to part your way. But be very careful, in sharing the equity, because it's one of the most expensive way to compensate anyone. But if it is professional, I think we need to set milestone, as indicated by Ajay, or as indicated by Andrew, having some kind of contract, because you never know when we need somebody, right? Because business keep on changing. Today they may not be directly aligned with your business, but tomorrow they may be the best guy. So need to be very careful.
Yeah, one of the things that I've done is, so the equity that I've used is anywhere from 0.25% to 1%, depending on the advisor, and then space it out over 2 years. So they're getting 1/24th every month. So if something doesn't work out, that you can let it go. And if you want to extend a relationship after that 2 years, talk about additional equity. So the key is, looking at it from my standpoint positively from day one, it's like getting married. You don't start off with thinking about how we're going to get divorced, right? Although prenuptial agreements are nice to have, but you want to make sure that you're on the same page and you have confidence and optimism in the relationship, because you don't want to sour it from day one. And the other thing is, as you said, it's, you got an advisor, the same advisor. So Rick Orloff, for instance, a former chief security officer at Apple, was on my company Eva's board. He's also on GSD board. The same with Bill Reichert and many others. So you want to use the relationship in a right kind of way and show them where they're going to make money, right? Why you're the best at doing it and how they're going to put money in their pocket. Because listen, they don't know you either. And they don't want to waste their time. And if you get somebody high level that's on your board of advisors, and you screw up by doing something nefarious, their name's on the line too. So it's got to be a win-win, got to be like a marriage. got to be for the long term, and it's got to be a situation that is a bit fun and exciting for them too, right? So let's look at it today. A lot of challenges on the planet Earth, right? Where do you find your advisors? Like right now, today, let's say a startup is looking for advisors. They're in Mumbai. So how in the world do they find people? They want to go global. Where do they look? AJ?
Um, I think there are defined events, especially where you can find like-minded people. One of the things I would do is try to use social media such as LinkedIn and try to understand who has a better depth in the areas that I'm looking at, right? And uh, not, but there is a catch there that not everyone who has depth will be able to advise you well, right? That's a different kind of a relationship. You can do great in coding, but you might not be good at advising people how to code, right? So those are the combinations in India specifically, and I'm thinking sure the rest of the world there are specific events which are linked to startups that you can attend and find those advisors. Today, the investors do help you find them as you go along, right? And there is a set already available. But I would definitely encourage those, lunch or meal talks with the advisors to understand the right fit, right? I think that is very crucial. You spend some time with them, understand their what their aspirations are, and then get them into the groove, get them to meet most of the main counterparts or your team members, right? Because there has to be a good balance. It's not only you that is important, it's the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew?
Well, one of the things I learned early on is that you have to go to paid events, and people always sort of they're a bit eerie about whether they should go to a paid event or not. But if you want to meet the right people and the decision makers and those advisors that have the ear of boards or governments or councils, etc., going to a paid event is always a valuable exercise. And make sure that you turn up before the event starts and you stay until the end, because you never know at the very end whether you're going to be on a boat just enjoying a meal with some real legends in the industry, and then you're able to have that conversation and introduce who you are and what you do. I mean, I'm all for social media and sending emails and things of that nature, but I feel that some of those events, there's a bit of serendipity there. You've turned up, you're dressed correctly, you've stayed until the end. Somebody's just happening to invite people for something to eat or a drink. Go along and make yourself available. Being an entrepreneur, it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's really the sort of Chinese style of 996, and even longer. You have to be willing to work until the wee hours of the morning. You have to be willing to jump on a plane at short notice. I mean, I think we've all done it here. You've boarded a flight the next day to somewhere else in the world, and you've just had to turn up, whether it's 30 degrees in a suit, to try and pitch what you do. And I think that's always important, is being available to make those opportunities, but also budgeting for those opportunities. I know cash is always tight with a startup, but have that budget in mind, or at least if you have some form of marketing budget, consider as part of your outreach program of reaching those advisors as part of marketing. It shouldn't be separate, and we shouldn't be thinking that we can do things for free. You have to be in a room sometimes with the individual to really convince them about what you're doing.
Yeah, no, one of face to face is always a good thing, right? Especially now we've come out of COVID. So, Neil, closing thoughts and how do people reach you?
Oh my God, the best. Ajay defined LinkedIn, right? But I still remember, Andrew stated that you might need to take odd flights. I still remember taking a flight, was traveling from point A to point B and landed up, catching up with, one very interesting entrepreneur and ultimately invested in that. So, you never know. Keep your eyes open and be attentive. I fully agree that you need to be there from start to end paid event. But the best way to reach out is LinkedIn today, no doubt. Of course, Twitter is also catching up, but LinkedIn is the best way to reach out as professional world.
This sounds great. Thanks, Anil. AJ, same thing. Closing thoughts on how do people reach you?
I think make yourself available and you use the tools effectively. Obviously, cab rides from the airport or long distance, you can always. I have done that. A couple of entrepreneurs shared the cab and got some nuggets, I hope. So I think make yourself available and understand what kind of a person you want. Right? It's not only about their knowledge; it's also about their personality. Right? Some can be in your face and you don't like that, while others can be really supportive. Right? You choose which kind of an advisor you want.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Andrew, same thing.
So, I mean, I would just finish off by saying make sure you value your company and don't give it away for free. You'll be in these situations, certainly if you're a young entrepreneur in crypto for the first time, and you'll be pressured into giving 1, 2, 3% on day zero. Don't do that. Think about it, work with the person, and then, work out a plan. Gary's, dividing into 24 works perfectly well. If people want to reach out to me, they can, find me on LinkedIn, Andrew Adcock. Alternatively, just go to crowdforangels.com and I'm on the team page there, so you'll find me.
That's great. Thanks, Andrew. And my final thoughts are, listen, this year are incredible times to go out for companies to go global. Remember, intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. Let's spread some kindness. There's a lot of challenges on the planet Earth today, a lot of things happening, and let's spread some kindness. My wife is Ukrainian Russian, and so on both sides of the fence, I lived in Russia, spent a lot of time in Ukraine and Belarus myself. Let's spread some kindness. Let's try to do the right thing. Let's show some compassion and empathy for each and every one of us, because we're all here on this beautiful planet to make a little dent. We're all here on this beautiful planet to help our families, to take care of each other. But let's really do it. So believe in your dreams, stay optimistic, and spread some love. My name is Gary Fowler, and I am the host of La Token VC TV. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay tuned for another exciting edition. Bye, everybody.